show is brought to you by Rebirth Radio. Get ready. We're going live in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Voices of Virtue.
Every time you open your mouth to speak, something is supposed to happen.
Let our conversations always be wise and seasoned with salt, so that we may know how to answer others.
This is something special for you.
Voices of Virtue.
We're going to help them, let them know that they're not alone, not being afraid to speak, because you know what's hidden shall be exposed.
Voices of Virtue.
So keep your ears open, your eyes seeking, your tongue talking, because it will be powerful.
There is no such thing as failure. Failure is just life trying to move us in another direction.
Voices of Virtue.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in once again to Voices of Virtue. Your host, Cheryl D. Resort, brought to you by Rebirth PR and Media, along with Shadow Worlds Radio. And I'm here coming to you way down from the middle of the boot, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Proud to be a mother of 3, a grandmother of 10. Come from a little town called McRae in Louisiana, like back in the 69s where the hippies were, that little town. That's where I come from. I'm a voice speaking with virtue, where I've taken my pain that I have been put through. It has pushed me to utilize the power within me to empower others. And as I forget that mess that's behind me and turn it into testimonies, miracles, and messages, and press for the mark of a higher calling. So we're here bringing it to you, open-hearted, real, raw, and always in love and truth from Voices of Virtue. So just be knowing that you can share this podcast, invite others, download it, and just know that you're welcome. And we want your feedback as well. And with that being said, we have our co-host with us, none other than Miss Simone Higginbotham, the CEO of Rebirth PR and Media, based out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Let's give it up for Miss Simone. Miss Simone, please tell us something about you and Rebirth.
Hey, Dee, how you doing this morning? Yes, as she said, look, we're good. We're good. You know, last week we were in a deep freeze here in the deep south, but I'm so glad to see that we have warmed up, and I'm excited about this podcast, but I'm just so excited that you had the opportunity to make me a part of it. A little bit about me. I am the CEO of Rebirth PR and Media. We are responsible for a lot of things. We do press releases. We manage social media. We do promotion. We do event planning. We do media placement, product placement. We do a lot for small businesses and nonprofits here in Baton Rouge and outside of Baton Rouge, even outside of the state of Louisiana. So, again, I'm excited about being here. I'm excited about our guest, too, Dee, this morning. Yes. Want to fill our listeners in on this awesome guest that we have that's going to be joining us?
Be ready, you all. Be ready. We have Ms. Carrie Davidson. Ms. Carrie Davidson, she's a social worker. And she's the owner of Rooted Counseling and Consultation, LLC. So, Ms. Davidson, please introduce yourself even better and to the people so they can know who we got bringing to them some profound information today as we talk about mental health and the pandemic.
Good morning. My name is Carrie Davidson. I am a licensed professional counselor, not a social worker. And I am the owner of Rooted Counseling and Consultation, LLC, here in the Baton Rouge area. I have been in the mental health field for basically the last 15 years, since 2005, when I graduated from Southern University, A&M.
and I'm such a proud alumni of Southern as well as LSU, but Southern is real close to my heart.
All right now. Look, exactly. Look, before we get started with Ms. Carrie, and she's on here, this morning, we always decided we were going to do something a little different this morning with Voices of Virtue, and that's the kind of, whatever the topic may be, we want to try to let our individual listeners know what's trending in that area of expertise or with that topic. So this morning I want to share with you, these are some of the possible mental health trends right now that these are main themes. And therapy and relationships. Of course, that's a big thing now that since during this pandemic, with therapy and relationships, we are together a lot more with our children, with our significant other or our spouse, just with family in general. So that sometimes can cause some issues, mental health issues. Healthcare, of course, with mental health. Advocacy, self-care, another thing that should be a big thing during the time of the pandemic. Inspiration, encouraging people to do greater self-care. Also social work, technology and education when it comes to mental health. And the nonprofits and how they're working with the mental health fields. Those are the things that are trending right now in mental health. So we're going to jump right back into with Ms. D, and we're going to get this thing started.
Wonderful. We want to thank you, Ms. Davidson. Thank you also, Ms. Higginbotham, for being here with us today. And another shout-out to Shadows World Radio for making this possible for us to get this information out into the airways for everyone to even come in united with us to speak on this subject, mental health during this pandemic. And to begin, with all that being said, the first question we want to ask Ms. Davidson and Ms. Higginbotham, please step in and rebuttal because we want your insight as we speak on today. Ms. Davidson, what would you say would be the number one effect from the pandemic that causes the mental health issue?
That's a good question. One of the things that I have seen in just talking with colleagues is that the healthcare. I think that this pandemic, rather depending on which end you were on, the healthcare industry, and I'm talking about your first responders, I'm talking about, which is basically, EMS, your doctors, your nurses, because the pandemic took everybody by storm. And then when you look at an individual person, their health. And so healthcare has had the biggest effect or the biggest transition in this pandemic. But the bigger question is, how did this affect healthcare workers and how they do what they do to ensure the proper healthcare for individuals, as well as not being able to have, they're coming out with the vaccines now, but you didn't have a vaccine, so trying to understand the symptomology of the COVID-19, not understanding if this is the flu, pneumonia, how do you decipher what I have, and then not having a clue of what I have or what's going on with my body. So I think that the healthcare professionals, the first responders, it has had a tremendous impact on the healthcare industry overall.
Ms. Simone, what would you have to say in regards to that?
I would have to agree with Ms. Davidson about that. We have saw a tremendous change in the way that healthcare is given, how it's received, and our first responders, they've been on the front line since day one. And these individuals have been under a tremendous amount of stress. A lot of them overworked because we just weren't prepared for this pandemic. We just weren't prepared. We just didn't have the expectations. And I think, number one, I'm going to say this. At the beginning, we did not have the expectation that it would have lasted this long. We're now going into a year. And a lot of people are just worn out. And a lot of people they're emotionally, physically, and mentally just worn out with this pandemic. And a lot of things are going to be, mental issues are going to be brought upon, things I think about like depression, anxiety. Those are the two top things that I think about when I think about first responders. So can I ask you this question, I add on to this, are you familiar with or do you know of any things that hospitals and healthcare organizations are putting into place that are going to assist the first responders, because even though as being a lay person and a person out in the community that's not involved directly with healthcare, I'm thinking that these are the individuals that need, just like with the vaccine, they were the first in line to get the vaccine. These should be the first people to get any type of mental health care before anyone else. And I'm not saying that, they're better or they should, but I'm just thinking these people are dealing with this firsthand. They're dealing with the fear of contracting it alone, which drove me insane. I'm just being honest.
One of the things that I do know, most hospitals, frontline workers, if you're affiliated with a hospital in, law enforcement or first responder EMS, you have insurance. And one of the things that, speaking with colleagues, you have your EAP, your Employee Assistance Program, which provides counseling for your doctors as well as your nurses or any persons as far as in the field, social workers, things of that nature that are on the front line. So the first thing that a person that is a first responder or a frontline worker is getting in contact with your EAP program through your insurance, your health insurance. And so that's always the first line of something that one can do to get assistance in counseling. Or you can go within the community. You have various persons in the community that provide counseling services. One of the things that I have, you talked about something, Simone, about some of the mental health issues such as the diagnosis as far as depression, anxiety. I would say also PTSD, because the pandemic has brought on trauma as far as the lives lost, the things that you see, and how quickly the turnaround of a person coming into the hospital, being on the ICU unit, it could be very traumatic. So there's a level of trauma that a first responder can experience. So when you're looking at those different things, there's a lot of, PTSD or trauma, or the word I'm looking for is people that they have reservations or phobias about certain things. I've seen a lot of persons that have been nurses for years. They ended up retiring because it was just too much. And just the change in how quickly they had to make adjustments with, no preparation, it has really put a lot of stressors or a lot of, it has kind of shifted, and it's made things a little bit difficult to handle because it has changed the dynamic of how you provide health care or to do your job as a doctor, as a nurse, as a tech, as a, lab technician. It has changed a lot. And so those are a lot of things that I see, the depression and anxiety. And PTSD, more trauma-specific. This has been very traumatic. And working with the families or working with a patient that you've done all that you could and there's not much that you can do. And so it can be very traumatic for a first-line person on the front line.
Exactly. And one thing that I would like to state is how can we, let me say this. There are so many articles, so many studies that are being done. How do we determine what article or what study, is beneficial? It's just so much information out there. It's almost like they say, when they talk about fake news. I don't know whether to look at it that way or to embrace this information because there's so much information and use it when it's so much.
If I could share and educate a person, you look at the CDC and what they're saying. However, I took just what I explained to you guys. I went to the CDC website. I went through Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson Johnson. And I also called my doctor to get information, credible sources, to learn about the vaccine and to have a better understanding. And when it comes down to mental health, there are fears and anxiety because so many misinformation that is out there about the vaccine and what it does and the purpose of it. I've heard all kind of conspiracy theories. And so there's a fear that is set in about taking the vaccine. And so you have that anxiety of what is it going to do? How is it going to make you feel? Will it give me the COVID? Will it, it's an embedded fear. The one thing that I can honestly share with anyone is to educate yourself. From a spiritual perspective, I'm going to learn, they always say you got to learn the word for yourself. So I can't go by what somebody else tells me. It's good to have that information, but I got to go to the source. And so for me, what subsided my fears about the vaccine, because I will tell you, if you ask any of my colleagues and my friends, my boss, I was dead set against it. But I had to learn for myself. And so if I could educate anyone, learn the information for yourself. Get the information from a credible source. It's natural to have the fears. It's natural to have the anxiety, even up until the day that I took the first shot. And I'm doing the two-phase. I'm doing the Pfizer. And the first day, even up until the point where she put the needle in my arm, I was in hesitation. I had fear. But the thing about it is, especially from a Christian perspective, I gave everything to God.
So let me ask you this. When you say get the information for yourself from a reliable source, that would be your primary physician? Or
yes.
I would think, that would be the most reliable. And if you don't have a primary physician, because there are some people that don't, what is a reliable source that you think? The pharmacist. Okay.
A pharmacist. You can go to a pharmacist. You can go to a nurse, nurse practitioner, anyone that's in the medical field. And then, of course, you're always going to have your biases. And some people are for it, that are those professionals. They have their thoughts behind it. However, don't just rely on one person that may not know. Allow it to be someone that's in the medical field. I even consulted my friends that are pharmacists, and they all said the same thing. You know how they say if someone tells you you have cancer, get a second opinion? I got a second opinion. I asked 3 pharmacists, 3 doctors. I went to the CDC. I got all my information and my research. But at the end of the day, one of the things that even though I had this information, I still had reservations and fears. And that's normal for anybody. But at the end of the day, again, I brought it back to my higher power, which is my God. And with my faith that I have in him, he's not going to allow anything to harm me. And when you have that much faith like I do, I can trust him. And so if it is my time, it's my time. But for right now, I'm going to do what's safe because I am in the healthcare profession. And I don't want to be a person that is of the spread of the COVID-19. I've been blessed not to be tested positive for it. And so I'm going to do my part. And as long as I can say I can do my part, I'm going to walk in faith.
Nothing more can
several questions in that one answer.
I have a question about the pandemic with the difference between the sexes. Have you found that women or have men been more susceptible to the mental health issues of the pandemic, or has it been maybe an even number?
I think it's been even. Let me tell you, this pandemic has gotten everybody. This COVID-19 don't have a gender. It don't have a race. It has affected everybody the same way. It's a what if, I don't know what the heck is going on. And I think that, most men, society says that men compartmentalize things. It's more mental. And with women, they say, women are Venus, women are from Mars, that little thing. Women are more emotional about it. But when I sit there and tell you this pandemic, it's even. I don't care if you're man, woman, it has affected us all the same way. And I think that, sometimes depending on where you are in life, you handle things differently. But I think across the board, and I may be wrong, this is my personal opinion, it has affected everybody in some shape, form, or fashion, because this pandemic, this COVID-19, does not have a gender. It doesn't have a race. It doesn't have an identity. It doesn't even have a culture. It's just what it is, a pandemic.
I've witnessed whereas, it is very contagious, and I've witnessed whereas a family member caught it from another family member, caught it from someone at work, and it actually brought confusion into the household because that person didn't obey the head of the household by sanctifying themselves from different atmospheres. And so it brings on so many other issues, and that's why it's so important, as everyone is saying, educate yourself. Don't be selfish in this, because some people are not taking it serious. I went to church this morning, and the pastor, his wife, the greeting, when I tell you I witnessed about 8 people this morning who have had it, and I didn't even know. And we got to take this thing serious. And with all that being said, it's like, okay, we are, as the adults, should be setting an example. So if we're not, what about our children? What do we do in this mindset to protect the mindset, the mental health of our children? Ms. Davidson, what do you have to say on that aspect?
Let me tell you one thing, and I love the church. Lord knows I love church, but I work on Sundays. So, but one of the things that when the pandemic hit, what I respected about my pastor, he was following the CDC, state laws being in the different phases. And I've seen, and I respected that about my pastor because our church capacity is over 200 people. So we have to follow the guidelines and respect that. And so part of the issue that I see, and I've seen families destroyed, especially when it was around the holiday time, because, let me go back. My mama said, I'm 65. I'm susceptible to catching the COVID. Can't nobody come in the house. She had a sign at the door. So in my own child, when he came to the house, we had to spray him down because we wanted to make sure that we maintained the integrity of our home and our cleanliness of the home, that it did not come in. As a healthcare professional, there's things that I have to do. Like I was taking off my clothes and I still do it. I have a bin outside the house. I take my clothes off, I spray down before I go into the house. Because I'm out in the community. I have not stopped working since the COVID happened. So there were things that I had to do as a healthcare professional in the position that I'm in to make sure that my home front was safe and secure. And so a lot of families feel as though, well, I don't have it yet. But the thing about it is, it's not about if you haven't gotten it yet, you don't want nobody to get it. So we need to follow these rules. And so the thing about it is, I'll tell anybody, your household is your household. You need to maintain. Family front have an understanding. You understand? Being that my family is small, I have an extended family who they're like my real family, but they're not blood, but they're my family. For Christmas, we did everything via Skype, via Zoom, because we respected the house, and we had to change things because we wanted to make sure that everybody was well. We wear our masks, and we follow those things. And it's communication. You have to communicate and understand, and that's one of the things that I have seen. Throughout this pandemic, I've seen families just break down, even though you're spending time with your immediate family, but as family as a whole. I've seen some things happen where it has broken up the families because, look, you're not coming to my house. I'm sorry. We're not having that big party. But then I've also seen the opposite, where they're having these big parties, and then when family members get sick, and they want to point the blame. Well, nobody told you to have over 50 people because it said to have 10.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ms. Davis.
And a lot of the transition, when losing a family member, would also change too. And I know I said the healthcare profession, but if I had to sit there and make a tie, the funeral business, because with funerals, when you lose a person, you have a funeral, and it may be 100 people or more. That changed the dynamic on how we even did funerals. My best friend is a funeral director, and when the pandemic hit, and I know this because I saw it firsthand for myself, she had to change. They had to change the dynamics on how they did funerals, and people did not understand the process. So you had people that were upset. It changed how you do funerals. And so when you have a large family when you got a grandmother with 15 grandchildren or 15 children, and a multitude of grandchildren that want to come to the funeral and they can't, and you can only have 5 people?
Yes.
Or 10 people?
Yes. Ms. Davidson, and all of this, we want to thank you. Our time is so been well spent. I want to thank you, but we hate to shut it down right now, but hopefully we can get you back on, Ms. Davidson.
Yes,
and with that, we want to ask, how can the listeners get in touch with you?
Yes. You can get in touch with me through Rooted. I'm on the web. I have a website at www.rootedcounselingandconsultation.com, as well as you can reach me at 225-888-1752.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And also we want to thank our co-host, Ms. Higginbotham, with Rebirth Public Relations and Media, along with Shadows World Radio. And again, thank you, Ms. Carrie Davidson, LPC and
yes,
owner
thank
of
you for having me.
And Transportation, LLC. Thank you so much. Self with Voices of Virtue, we encourage you, our listening audience, to know your identity, walk in your authority, stand in integrity. Because of virtue, there's no one to be and no one to do a better you. Thank you for listening to Voices of Virtue.
Voices of Virtue.
This show is brought to you by Rebirth Radio.
Voices of Virtue.